BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Ned 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. All right, welcome to our Zodiac Killer book discussion on Thomas Henry Horan's book, The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. We did a recent poll on this channel asking you guys what you wanted to hear about, choosing between the myth of the Zodiac Killer and the Zodiac Manson connection, and this one was the winner. But if you are somebody who voted for the Zodiac Manson connection, I won't leave you out in the cold, and we will do something about that in the near future. So please look out for an episode on that one coming soon, and now is a great time to hit that subscribe button so you can follow along with all of these things. So, with the myth of the Zodiac Killer, I got onto this subject back in 2019 for a very particular reason. Even if you go back and find some of the old black box recordings, I was talking about a particular question that I wanted an answer to. Were the Zodiac murders of 1968 and 69 committed by a single individual, a single perpetrator, or were there multiple assailants, were there multiple killers, multiple murderers? And I just really wanted to know that because I found that I was really looking at the psychological markers more so than anything tied to the physical evidence. I just began to wonder, are we dealing with the psychology of multiple people with the Zodiac murders of 1968 and 69? And I never got a 100% clear answer, and the mystery still is open. The case remains unsolved. But in regards to the Zodiac hoax theory, I learned about Thomas Henry Horan's material, and it definitely was going down some pathway that was similar to what I was looking for, or something that allowed me to explore the suspicions that I had rather than something I was looking for. And the second thing that really pulled me into this was during the first interview I ever heard with Thomas Henry Horan, he made an extremely bold claim where he said that Robert Graysmith may have been an active participant in the Zodiac Killer mystery. Robert Graysmith, of course, the author of the most famous book, Zodiac, from 1986, that if he had any type of active role in this, if that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what else would. So I began to learn more about the Zodiac hoax theory over the past 12 months, and it goes in many different directions. If you look more into the Zodiac hoax theory and the myth of the Zodiac Killer, you will find an enormous amount of claims. There are things in there about the Zodiac Manson connection, and there are also things about CIA operatives. There are things about drug smuggling. There are things possibly about some type of policeman thrill kill club, and the real assailants couldn't have possibly written the letters. Well, maybe the person who wrote the letters committed one of the murders, but maybe this, maybe that. There are so many different claims. So I thought if we're going to be doing a discussion on the book, let's look at the heart and soul of the issues. What are the claims that Thomas Henry Horan makes that are not maybes, that are not possibilities? What are the things that he says that he can take to the bank, that he can certify? And what is the message of this book, the thesis statement, and the three major argumentative points that he puts forward? Number one, in 1986, Robert Graysmith published a book called Zodiac that was based on the police reports, but Graysmith altered the material in his presentation. In short, Graysmith lied, he fabricated the narrative, he spread a bunch of disinfo, he had access to the case files, and that he intentionally misrepresented them in the 1986 book Zodiac. So number one, Graysmith lied. The second one is that the person who was writing the first Zodiac letters, the original Zodiac letters, had access to information that the real killer couldn't have possibly known. And as you see, this will become the foundation of the Zodiac hoax theory, the myth of the Zodiac killer. And the third claim is that those letters were written by an individual named Harold K. Snook, a Napa County deputy. And if we have to package all of this into one sentence as easily as we can, the Zodiac hoax theory and the myth of the Zodiac killer would follow as someone was writing letters taking credit for murders that he didn't commit, and then this will be shared in a variety of ways. Now, I guess that really doesn't give me the answer to the question about was Robert Graysmith an active participant in this, and throughout this one, you'll see that this is part one of a multi-part book discussion. We're going to be going through chapter one and the introduction for this segment, and well, next one we will pick up with chapter 2. So, as always, you can hit that subscribe button one more time if you'd like to follow along. So, let's get started with this one here. To keep going with our first point, Robert Graysmith lied in his book Zodiac. and Thomas Horn has all of his material in The Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986 for a particular reason, because he says you need to forget Robert Graysmith's narrative. It became very influential, so influential to the point where police officers and detectives began using it as the authority on the Zodiac Killer mystery, because they learned that Robert Graysmith wrote his book based on findings from the police reports. But some of the lies that Graysmith is accused of is saying that he lied about his job at the Chronicle, saying that he was just an editorial cartoonist, when in reality he was a production assistant, and he handled many different things, even associated with photography. But he did various forms of illustration, not only for editorial cartoons, but, I mean, I don't think that's too relevant to the mystery right now. But if you do get a chance to see the very famous drawing of the Zodiac Killer, that is a Robert Graysmith original. I mean, he should have stuck to illustrating rather than investigating. And the second thing that we should note about Graysmith's narrative is that he claims that the evidence, the modus operandi, the fingerprints, all suggest that there was a single perpetrator who committed these murders. And in the 1986 book, you're of course dealing with Robert Hall Starr, a pseudonym that Robert Graysmith gave to an individual named Arthur Lee Allen. Now, if we're going to talk about how Graysmith presents a material that is a little bit sketchy, or that is a little bit inappropriate, or just that is something that isn't super accurate, there's a particular part of the myth of the Zodiac Killer where Thomas Horn highlights a section from Robert Graysmith's 1986 book Zodiac, and he's talking about the Lake Herman Road murders that occurred on December 20th of 1968, claiming that there are no witnesses that saw the shooter. That's something that Graysmith says, right? Not a very controversial statement. But also, we said that Betty Lou Jensen and David Arthur Faraday were murdered at Lake Herman Road. They did not survive. They did not live to tell the tale. Yet Graysmith still says that they must have seen the silhouette of a stocky man who moved like the darkness of the rolling hills, or something to that effect. As you can see, there's a little bit of flowery language thrown in there, but the more important thing to note is that if there are no witnesses who saw this shooter, and David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen didn't live to tell the tale, how does Robert Graysmith know anything about the perpetrator's physical appearance, or know anything about what this guy looked like? How does he know that there was a stocky man there if nobody has any physical descriptions? One thing we should add is that somebody did drive by and see a car that was parked next to David Faraday's car, and then this person later on said that he reported that he heard gunshots, but I mean, he wasn't looking for the perpetrator because he's just driving down the road, and how would he know that there was a murder that was about to take place? But that is one thing that has been shared about the Lake Herman Road shooting on December 20th of 1968. And then Thomas Henry Horn would like to keep going with his claims about how everything that you will learn about the Zodiac Killer post-1986 comes from Robert Graysmith's book. Documentaries, podcasts, exploratory discussions, things that people are saying on forums. It's all based on Graysmith's 1986 book, which is a pack of lies. And I have always disputed this. I'm like, well, we have so many primary source documents that are available right now. I mean, we can even go beyond Robert Graysmith, let alone the Zodiac Killer letter. You can find all of those on the internet. We've talked about nearly every single one of them. And there are even people who have done audio recordings of all the confirmed Zodiac letters here on YouTube. We have all of these primary source documents, let alone the entire case file has been made available to the general public. So that was something that I pushed back as well. And when we did a series called The Zodiac Killer Hoax Theory Open Discussion here on this channel, we went through 8 short articles that were written by an individual named Michael Butterfield, ZodiacKillerFacts.com, and he said almost the exact same thing. So we were on the same page with that one. Yet we received a comment on that stuff from Evan from Texas, who wanted to share one particular thing, when he said that, okay, you're paying attention to that, but it's a bit of a misinterpretation, because what Thomas Henry Horn is trying to do with that is he's using hyperbole. He's using extreme exaggeration to draw attention to a particular point that has mostly been overlooked. And that is that Graysmith was very influential. And yes, Thomas Henry Horn is being very loud. And if you listen to the Stones Unturned podcast, his show, you will find that he uses a lot of media persuasion tactics, or he's very familiar with the media business, also working as a music journalist. journalist and former stand-up comedian. He knows how to do things in the media business to get a to get a desired effect and a desired outcome from the audience, as well as other people who are being critical of his work. He knows about that type of process. So he's being very hyperbolic and he's exaggerating the material to get a desired effect. And that is that we really need to pay attention to the fact that Graysmith was very influential. And after reading the book, The Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986, I just began to notice some of these claims. Like when you're watching a documentary, they will talk about something that Thomas Henry Horan has stated that Graysmith has lied about, but then the documentaries and the or the podcast will just keep going with the narrative. And it's something that is quite difficult to find out, but we will see many of these examples as we go through the book, The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. So I think that it's also important for us to recognize that Arthur Lee Allen is somebody who was Graysmith's suspect for 1986, but people to this day still believe that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer. He was allegedly exonerated because of DNA and fingerprint and side palm print testing on the letters. However, there are people still who believe that, yes, indeed, Arthur Lee Allen was either the Zodiac or he had some type of active participant role, because I would have to say that the most solid version, or the simplest version of the group murder theory. I said solid because it's there are fewer arms that people would have to latch onto and tear apart. The simplest version of the group murder theory is just that it was Arthur Lee Allen and he had a partner. Which partner? Perhaps somebody such as Donald Lee Cheney, who comes up in Robert Graysmith's work a lot, and that these two individuals were behind it, or at the very least, Allen was involved with committing the murders and Don Cheney wrote the letters, possibly also being the assailant at Lake Berryessa, wearing the costume, tying up the victims and stabbing them. That is a very simple variant of the group murder theory, but in terms of Arthur Lee Allen having anything to do with this, a lot of that does come from the narrative that was established by Robert Graysmith. And what seems to have happened is that the case was taken to court, and they revealed the entire case file to the general public. I want to say that Mike Rodelli was the person who was behind that, and what people have shared on the internet is that Robert Graysmith was counting on the fact that this case file in its entirety would never have been made available to the general public, and that people wouldn't be able to cross-reference his 1986 book Zodiac with the material in the case file, because even people who are somewhat fans of Robert Graysmith even say many things to that are in line with what Thomas Henry Horan would have to say. And that is that he has blatant errors in his book. He has deliberate errors. He has areas in which he blatantly lied to mislead the general public. Mark Hewitt brought up a perhaps skeptical response to Thomas Henry Horan's claims, saying that, number one, Graysmith was doing this prior to computers. He did not have any type of electronic database. And as we said, he was a production assistant, not an investigative journalist. So it's possible that he committed genuine errors in his research, sifting through papers and such. But it's also possible that the publisher, St. Martin's Press from 1986, put pressure on Robert Graysmith to alter certain parts of his book to make it more marketable to the general public. So pressure from the publishers, as well as not having an electronic database, could account for some of that. But here's something else, though, that I heard from Thomas Henry Horan, and I can't even tell you if this was from the Stones Unturned or a different interview that he did once. But he said one person that is a genuine believer in the Zodiac hoax theory. As we said, that one person was writing letters taking credit for murders that he didn't commit. One person who's a genuine believer in that is Robert Graysmith himself. Because Robert Graysmith would have had to have known that these murders could not be connected based on the way that he lied in his book. Because if he had access to the documents, it would show certain areas that are where he's intentionally trying to make people think that this was all the actions of one person. I mean, that's just a claim from Thomas Henry Horan, and this is part one, and we're going to find out if these things are true or false. So let's go on to another claim that is made by Thomas Henry Horan in regards to his presentation on the subject. If we have the beginning of the Zodiac Killer mystery, let's not even go to December 20th of 1968 and talk about Lake Herman Road. The early parts of this book are talking about the murder of Sherry Jo Bates on October 30th of 1966. Now, what Thomas Henry Horan wants to do is he wants to create a almost like a Venn diagram, if you will, between the Lake Herman Road murders on December 20th of 68 and the Sherry Jo Bates murder. And there are just countless differences that he wants to go by, and saying that it's almost impractical to try and link them together from a forensic standpoint. talking about how Sherry Jo Bates was stabbed to death, Betty Lou Jensen was shot. There was a single individual who was murdered in Riverside in '66, whereas at Lake Herman Road there were two individuals. And here is a big thing, though, about Lake Herman Road that was almost rarely talked about, and that is that the families of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen did not know where they were. They did not know their whereabouts at the time of the murder. And it is even still 100% unclear why Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday were in that parking lot at Lake Herman Road on December 20th of 1968. There are a few things that I could put forward. There are a few things that I could speculate about, but we can talk about Thomas Henry Horn's theory when he says that it's most likely that Lake Herman Road was not a lover's lane, and that instead it was a parking lot that was at the top of a road. It is the access entry area for a water pumping station, and that it wasn't even a traditional lover's lane because their car was so close to the road that people would have been able to see, and there was no way to go there for intimacy. Instead, it was a dump site that was used by small-time drug dealers or interacting with the Hells Angels and such, and that David Faraday possibly had a dispute with an individual whom he was going to rat out to the police, or he had called out the individual for being connected with something to do with drugs, and that he had gone to that parking lot to have a confrontation with this individual, and that an area where Graysmith possibly lies is when he says that there had to have only been one individual that came up to David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen and shot them, where there could have been multiple people in a car, as well as this could have been something that was set up where David Faraday was ambushed, and that they were trying to, as we said, take him out because he could have gone to the police about certain info that was relevant to small-time drug dealers. I mean, that's some things that I don't necessarily know if we will ever get the answers to those particular questions. I mean, what do we make of that? What I can say is that it is almost an impractical form of hair splitting. If you're going to make the claim that Lake Herman Road was not a lover's lane, or that their car was not parked in an area that would have given them privacy for intimate relations, all right, so then it's a place where people went for drugs? Well, I mean, there could have been a motivation for people to go there, so they didn't go there for intimacy. It's just they went there for a different reason. I mean, the whole point is people are going to Lake Herman Road, and if it's so visible from the side of the road, why are people dealing drugs there? So I don't really think that is a super revelation of any kind. Instead, it just rather appears that the motivation remains unclear. But another point you might read about is that David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were on their first date, and they went to Mr. Ed's Diner, I think was the name of it, and that we're gonna find out that is also something that is a misrepresentation by Graysmith, and that they never went to any type of diner. It's just unclear why they were in the parking lot, but I mean, somebody targeted them in a place where people go to buy drugs. I mean, okay, so people don't show up there to use it as a lover's lane. They show up there for a different reason. I mean, the point is they went to the parking lot, and it's almost obvious that their car was parked there with the intent to do something. Whatever that is, I mean, I think the bigger fact is that they were murdered. So if we can carry on with this type of thinking, I would like to go back to the concept of why don't more people support the Zodiac hoax theory? Because at least two different people have written in, and they've been asking this question. And that is that why didn't more people come to this conclusion in the 1970s? If the FBI had assembled this case file during that decade, why didn't that happen sooner, where somebody would have reached the same conclusion that Thomas Henry Horn would have? Because the final confirmed Zodiac incident is on October 11th of 1969, and then if the FBI is looking into this throughout the 1970s, why didn't somebody else reach the same conclusion and simply pass on the information to San Francisco and say, hey, wait a second, the person writing these Zodiac killer letters couldn't have been the real killer because they have information that is only found in the police reports, and the real killer couldn't have possibly known that? Why didn't that happen sooner? And first thing I can say is I don't have a 100% answer, but the second thing is I think that's a really good question, and the third one is that Thomas Horn talks about that a little bit by saying that one of Graysmith's biggest disinfo errors is that the police did have other suspects in this. I mean, we're talking about not the FBI, but many different police officers actually did have suspicions, and they had suspects, and this was something that was widely known throughout the departments, that there could be other individuals who are responsible for the murders of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, definitely in the murder of Darlene Ferrin and the shooting of Mike Mageau. So the San Francisco PD, as well as Vallejo, Napa County, they had other suspects in this, and that I mean, so it's something that has been addressed that way. But I think Thomas Henry Horn is simply going down the pathway that most people didn't read the case file in its entirety. And there are three individuals that he calls out by name: Mike Rodelli, Michael Butterfield, and Tom Voigt in the early parts of the myth of the Zodiac Killer. And he says these individuals have all had access to the case file, and this is my favorite line in the book so far, but they probably didn't read it. All right, so what do you have to say about anything that we've covered so far? I want to emphasize this is part one. This is an introduction. We will be talking about more things. If there's a certain thing about the Zodiac Killer hoax theory that you didn't hear covered yet, the myth of the Zodiac Killer that you didn't hear about yet, we will probably get to it at some point. We've gone through the introduction and chapter 1 of the book, and we will be doing some more about this as time goes by. So please drop your ideas in the comment section. Share anything you would like to say. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you're welcome to do so. But most importantly, please share your ideas in the comment section so we can continue the discussion. That's all for me now, and I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.